Painkillers, blood thinners, and chemotherapy drugs are just some of the substances that are found in your drinking water. There's new information that some drugs are ending up in our water at levels never seen before.
Most people don't think about where their water comes from. They just turn on the tap and they expect it to be there.
It's a public health crisis of massive proportions.
Toxic cocktail of chemicals in our tap water could lead to cancer.
PFAS, which are chemicals used in consumer products like firefighting foam and non-stick cookware, can be found in 610 locations across the country, and that includes drinking water for about 19 million people.
These chemicals could result in over 100,000 cancer cases over a lifetime, which is about 70 years.
Thousands of people in Parkersburg and along the entire Ohio River were contaminated.
They come and tested our water and they said, we'll send you a report in a couple of weeks or whatever. And they called us in a few days and they said, do not drink your water, don't use it for cooking, nothing.
How high were your levels when they told you about your water?
They're supposed to be under 40 parts per trillion. Ours is 26,000.
26,000?
A lot of chemicals, when they go into your body or when they end up in the environment, they break down, they slowly decompose. PFAS don't do that. Once you put PFAS somewhere, it's going to stay there practically forever. They are nearly indestructible.
So if you're drinking tap water, you might want to think twice because it's pretty toxic.
On the surface, tap water sounds like this great thing. The government is giving us peasants cheap, practically free drinking water? How kind of them, right? But in reality, your tap water is slowly killing you. See, every time you drink a glass of American tap water, every time you take a shower, wash your hands, or rinse your mouth, you are ingesting a giant cocktail of highly toxic chemicals. Toxic chemicals such as PFAS, also known as forever chemicals that stay in your body forever.
They are found in every one of you.
Are linked to higher rates of cancer and birth defects.
I've got great news for you, and it's right under this macaroni and cheese. Now, glass ovenware comes with a Teflon finish. So now glass is not the cleanup problem it used to be.
Between 1951 and 2003, almost 800 tons of PFOA, that special type of forever chemical that also was found in my blood, were discharged by DuPont.
PFAS contamination is really a national crisis. The more we test, the more we find it. It is the manufacturers like DuPont and 3M who have gotten us here today. So they've known for 70 years that they were poisoning the water, and they didn't tell the EPA, they didn't tell their neighbors, they didn't tell their workers, they didn't tell anyone because they were making too much money. The FDA knew in the 1960s, the Department of Defense knew in the 1970s, the EPA has known since at least the 90s, and they didn't treat the issue with the amount of urgency that it needed.
The EPA doesn't require utilities to regularly test for them, so there's really no way for the average American to know if it's even in their drinking water right now or in their food. There has been no new drinking water standard in the United States since the 1990s, 30 years.
Drinking tap water also means that you're drinking every pharmaceutical drug known to man, like birth control. People urinate out the drugs they take into the wastewater that then gets treated and sent back to your faucets.
Some of the drug comes in us and through us and out of us totally unchanged. So we actually have active drugs going into the waterway through our urine or feces.
Over the last several years, the U.S. Geological Survey has tested the water. It found that something in the water is tampering with the hormones of 85% of the male smallmouth bass and a quarter of the male largemouth bass, and causing them to develop female reproductive traits. Researchers suspect pharmaceuticals from human waste that the upstream water treatment plant can filter.
There's also heavy metals like lead, chlorine, pesticides, fluoride, microplastics.
You might think your tap water tastes terrible, but water we bathe and shower in could actually be more dangerous than the water that we drink.
Yeah, it's true. You see, when you drink water, our bodies filter some of the bad stuff out. That's not ideal because it's still in your system. But when we shower or bathe, our skin absorbs all the contaminants like chlorine and stuff 6 times faster than if we can drink. This is ordinary Tucson tap water. It's the same water. These are pool test drops that you test your backyard swimming pool. Yeah. So if it turns yellow, there's chlorine in there.
Instantly.
Yep. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to swish my fingers around in this one a little bit to simulate taking a bath or a shower. Drop the same number of drops in the same water.
I don't see anything. So you're telling me that in the 2 seconds you had your fingers in that water, where did it go?
Every bit of that chlorine was absorbed through my skin, and now it's going into my bloodstream.
In fact, this is what a reverse osmosis filter in an American home looks like after just 3 months of use. Needless to say, if you want to be a king, you shouldn't be drinking the water of the peasants. But why? Why is American tap water this terrible? Welcome to Evil Food Supply, and this is how America poisoned our water.
As Mark Twain once said, whiskey is for sipping and water is for fighting. And there's going to be a lot of fighting about this before it's done.
The wealthiest individuals do not consume the same water as the general public, so it is recommended that you opt for high-quality water as well. In the late 1800s, Americans started laying down the pipes for their tap water infrastructure. And what material did they build these water pipes out of? Why, they chose the most durable, malleable, abundant metal they could find, lead. See, back then, they didn't know lead was all that bad. They just wanted to build some awesome pipes. And so America's tap water was being delivered straight to your faucet via toxic lead pipes. And as the decades went on, scientists began to realize that exposure to lead, even in very small amounts, could lead to things like blindness and anemia. But the damage had already been done. Here's the other thing you have to understand about our tap water system. It's that a lot of that tap water that comes out of your faucet comes from recycled toilet water. Yes, that's right. Whatever you excrete out into your toilet gets flushed down the drain, into a water treatment facility, and back into your tap water. Which is all fine and dandy if these water treatment facilities could actually filter out everything. But unfortunately, they can't. Most municipalities just don't have the technology to filter out every single random chemical out there, which is a problem because Americans take a lot of drugs. 60% of Americans over the age of 18 take at least one type of pharmaceutical drug. And antibiotic use has skyrocketed to 270 million prescriptions per year. Birth control pills, narcotics, antibiotics, Prozac, all these substances that contain a whole cocktail of chemical compounds, hormones, and other things that alter our bodies are all getting excreted straight into your tap water. Philadelphia tap water contains 56 different pharmaceutical drugs. Southern California water has high amounts of both anti-epileptic and anti-anxiety medication. Whatever medications your neighbors are taking, you are too. And you might be thinking, well, okay, I'll just stick to bottled water then. Bottled water isn't too bad, right? Well, think again. Look on any bottled water label and you will find words like pure, purified, life. But these bottled waters are far from pure, and they are definitely not giving you life. See, whenever you see anything along the lines of purified water on a bottle of water, that's just a rosy sounding name for American municipal tap water that you have to pay 3,000% more for. In a recent study, it was found that 1/3 of American bottled water brands contain chemical contaminants that exceed recommended levels. And apparently, as long as these bottled water companies don't go over the maximum levels of contaminants listed by the EPA, the water can be sold. That's right. These companies are literally just filling up plastic bottles with tap water and reselling it to you for 3,000% the price. And if there's a sprinkle of PFAS or pharmaceuticals, that's just fine, as long as it's technically under the limit. Even spring water bottles aren't safe. Companies like Starkey Spring Water contain 3 times more arsenic than other brands. Poland Spring contains PFAS. And what about luxury water brands like Evian that comes from the French Alps, or Fiji water from the rainforests of Fiji, slowly filtered by volcanic rock? These waters are famous for being the purest of the pure. And for the most part, the water itself is not half bad. But these brands are sold in plastic bottles. Plastic bottles that are repeatedly heated and cooled during the manufacturing and shipping process. These plastic bottles also leak a pesky little chemical called phthalates into your water. And phthalates are known to block the production of androgen, the male hormone that produces testosterone. Plastic bottles also used to contain BPA, a chemical in plastic that has an almost identical structure to human hormones. And BPA has been in our plastic bottles for decades. But in 2008, scientists found out that it is extremely toxic, even in low doses, and can lead to things like severe birth defects, abnormally sized genitalia, and infertility. And when the bottled water companies found out about this, they immediately switched over to a different chemical called BPS. A seemingly noble move, until studies showed that BPS is pretty much the same as BPA. So if American tap water is so bad, why doesn't the government do anything about it? Simple. There's no incentive to. Think about it. What's a more pressing issue that will get votes? Invisible chemicals in the water that you can't see, smell, or taste that aren't going to materialize in diseases until decades later? Or the latest war or social program? But it's not just the government that doesn't have an incentive to clean up the water supply. The small water utilities across the US also do everything they can to avoid filtering chemicals, because filtering these complex industrial chemicals is super expensive. And tap water is a business. So if the water utilities decide to only test water from a certain area of town that is less toxic, or only report samples that show low toxicity, they're going to be inclined to do it. Because the last thing they want is to spend more money on expensive water filtration methods because their water was proven to be dirty.